ahead and get started here. Thank you all again for joining us for lunch. This is the last session. It's been a really great week. Really enjoying all the talks. It's been great to have Ken, Gary, and Brent share all their expertise, all things birds. It's been a really interesting and informative week, I think. So I hope you're all enjoying it too. Today we're capping things off to talk about songbirds with Brent again, and we'll get into that shortly. I did just want to quickly mention again, we'll be doing these forestry lunch breaks again next month, focusing on root rots. I'll probably put that link in the chat a couple different times, but it's already in there now. So feel free to sign up for that one. And I may do another one in March, but generally I think this is going to be kind of winter programming. And so if I don't get to one in March, we'll probably be picking this back up next, November or so. All right. Well, typical logistics, please make sure that you're setting your chat box setting to everybody. And I posted the webpage where all the recordings will be. Hopefully I can get the final one up there shortly after it's over this afternoon, or it'll be up by next Tuesday. But again, that webpage will stay up for, in perpetuity. I don't plan on getting rid of it. So if you want to bookmark that link, go back and watch it as much as you'd like. Okay, so I will turn things over to you, Brent. I do want to just quickly add too, at the end of this, I'm going to be plugging in a link for a survey too. So stick around for that, and please, provide your feedback on this series, and also tell me, what else you'd like to hear about in future series. All of the ones that I've done so far, I've actually picked based off of what people have suggested in these surveys. So I do use that information. Okay, well, let's turn it over to you, Brent. You ready?
Yep. Won't let me share. It says host is disabled.
That's right. I forgot. I gotta make you co-host here. You should be good now.
Yep. Are you guys seeing the correct one or the?
Oh, well, I'm seeing it with your notes and stuff. It's not in presentation mode yet.
Yep. Go to little. There you go.
There we go.
So, nice.
Perfect.
All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday, and thanks for joining the last lunch webinar. I'm Brent Haverkamp. Turn my video on so you can all see me. I'm Brent Haverkamp, fish and wildlife biologist for the Department of Natural Resources, and I work in the small forest landowners office and assist small forest landowners on stream typing and wetland delineation. And this lunch seminar is going to cover a wildlife species we all have in common as they visit our backyards frequently. And we know when spring is here as they begin to sing out the songbirds. Turn my video off so it comes in more clear. And here we have the chickadee that Ken went over yesterday. And as I was researching songbirds, I came across an interesting scientific study that's going on in the high elevations around Lake Tahoe in California and Nevada. And they are actually researching these chickadees' ability for spatial cognition to remember their environments. So they actually will cache food inside of trees and crevices, and anywhere they can kind of stash seeds and other sort of, potentially insects like the mealworms that Ken had in the other photo of this chickadee flying into the tree. And then they have to have this ability to remember where that cache is in the wintertime when food gets hard to find. So it's kind of a unique mechanism of survival, is them being able to recall where they stored their food. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I just kind of wanted to put that out there. And the full article is on the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. So if you want to read the whole thing, you can go there and learn more about the chickadees. So now off to the songbirds. There's approximately 4,500 different species of songbirds. consist of the blackbirds, cardinals, warblers, wrens, tanagers, thrush, sparrows, and many, many more. They fall into the order Passeriformes and are considered perching birds. And as you can see on this photo to the left here, they have this unique tendon in their leg. So if you could picture, like, you hold your arm out straight, and as you like bend your arm back towards you, your fist would kind of clench. That's kind of sort of what this tendon does for the songbirds. As they bend their legs, their feet will clench around branches. And this actually allows them to sleep on branches also. And they have 3 forward facing toes and 1 backward facing toe. As you can see, this says Phoebe on the right here with his feet clenched around that small branch. And the song of the songbirds, they're vocally in a league of their own, and they have a very specialized voice box called a syrinx, as you can see on the diagram on the right. And each branch of this, as you can kind of see the branches in there, the birds, they're able to control each branch of that. And that allows them to seamlessly switch sides of the syrinx without stopping for a breath. And that produces 2 unrelated pitches at once. So it's kind of, and you can also see they have air sacs outside of their lungs, so they can hold quite a bit of air as they sing. That way they can sing for quite a while. Most of them will sing in the spring to attract a mate. This is why you hear birds more often in the spring and early summer compared to other times of the year. It is also usually the male that sings, and the female listens for the perfect song. The birds will begin to learn their songs at like 3 weeks of age. So they kind of, and I'm wondering if it, if there's someone out there that wants to be an ornithologist, there might be a good study out there relating chickadees' ability to cache food along with their songs. I'm not sure if that's related or not, but it would not surprise me if it was. And the birds will also sing to show and defend their territory. And the best time to hear birds sing is in the early morning hours before and during sunrise. And here we have a meadowlark singing away. And here we have some of the resident songbirds of Washington State. And on the top left here, we have the state bird, the American goldfinch, perfectly pictured in thistle, as they are kind of one of the latest birds to nest. And they will use thistledown in their nest, and they'll eat the thistle. So they have the goldfinch and the thistle have a very good relationship. And they have the red-winged blackbird, the cedar waxwing, which is a really cool bird. And you kind of see those waxwing red tips on its wings. And then the dark-eyed junco. That's kind of lots of places and kind of consider that the bird of winter. They start showing up from higher elevations and they kind of migrate south a little. And the dark eye and dark head, you kind of know winter is on the way when you see those. And we have the nuthatch, American robin, and a spotted towhee. And another thing I wanted to point out about all these birds is if you notice their beaks, and they are all kind of shaped differently. Some of them are sort of the same, but they all have unique feeding structures out of these beaks. Like the cedar waxwing here is much like the spotted towhee. And you can see that towhee's just crushing that berry. Meanwhile, the robin over here is eating the berry whole. Because its jaw and its beak is not, doesn't have the same structure as the towhee here that it can just crush it. And robins their beaks are built more to find worms and be on the ground and pull out insects, kind of like the red-winged blackbird. You'll see those a lot in marshes, flying around, eating insects. And the cedar waxwing, they're more like the towhee. They eat a lot of fruit, berries, and all birds will eat insects. And the junco, which is kind of a sparrow, I think it is in the sparrow family, and they're really good. Their beaks are made so they can crack open seeds and get the seed out of the shell. And the nuthatch, their beak will not allow them to do that, and they will actually take seeds from your feeder and shove them into their seeds off the ground, and they'll shove them into crevices in the tree, and then they'll use their beak to split that seed open to get the seed shell open to get the seed out. And then another one here we have is the grosbeak, and you can see the close-up of this beak. And he can split open real hard shells and get seeds out. You see those guys a lot on feeders as well. And then we have the Neotropical Songbirds. These are the birds that they migrate from the Caribbean and Central America, South America during winter, and they come all the way up to our northern forest to breed in US and Canada. And like the western tanager down here on the middle of the bottom, they're the only tanager that breeds clear up in the northwest into Canada, and they'll spend as little as 2 months in their breeding grounds. So they fly up here and breed and eat some insects and take off back to the south. And then we have some of the warblers here, yellow warbler, yellow rumped warbler, I believe, Townsend's warbler. These birds they'll eat a lot of insects when they're up in our forest. They also eat berries and seeds on their way if they're kind of when the insect populations start to dwindle down on their way back south. And here's a real cool map, and you can see on the left is kind of the dates of these birds and their migration, and on the right you can see the actual species. So I'll let that play for a little while. As you can see, a lot of the migration starts August. They start heading south, sometimes even in July, and they all pretty much back up into the north by April. And Ken or Gary or Patrick, if you have anything you want to add in with this, feel free.
Yeah, I will throw this out. The numbers are a little confusing, but each dot represents a species and observations from eBird, that great database that Cornell Lab put together. So it basically suggests and shows the way that the birds move up and south with the seasons. And so if you look at the dates of April, May, the blue dots going north, at least for the songbirds that Brent's talking about, are following leaf break. And in late summer, well before fall, those birds turn around and go back. And so the numbers, it's a little hard to follow, but each number is a species, not an individual bird. So it's giving you a trend of where these birds have been observed. And it's just totally amazing. And tease back into this thing. You can find it at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology site, but the graphic of how the birds move is just, I think, really cool too. So thanks for including that, Brent.
Yeah, super cool. And like Ken said, if you want to go to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and search for their mesmerizing migration map, you'll find this, and you can find all the species that they have listed in the numbers on the right. So now we'll go into some songbird habitat. And over here, at the top left, you can kind of see this is an old growth forest. Some second growth and some shrub layers. Middle photo is a nice thick riparian area. Photo on the right here is a dense alder stand. And then we have a nice brush pile and a ground nest here. The ground nester is actually the dark-eyed junco. Then I figured we'd kind of play a game here. We'll start with the evening grosbeak. I'm going to kind of read off their habitats. And the evening grosbeak is a species that is here year-round. They prefer mature and second growth forest. So we're going to pop him in there. They nest high in trees or large shrubs, and in winter, you'll see them in a variety of habitats. And they often come into your feeders as well. Next, we'll have the western tanager, and they prefer open coniferous and mixed coniferous deciduous woodlands. Oftentimes, you'll see them breed in riparian woodlands. Next, we have the Townsend's warbler, and they prefer mature coniferous old growth with extensive understory. In migration, you will see them use willow and alder along waterways and coniferous woodlands. And these guys nest high up in large trees on a main limb at an average height of 36 feet above ground. So pop another one of those guys up there. Then we have the hermit thrush. You often see the hermit thrush and the other thrushes on ground rustling through leaves. There is some species of hermit thrush that live higher up in the trees. But the hermit thrush you often see in open areas inside of the forest. And they are also ground nesters. So put them in there with the dark-eyed junco. And next we have our yellow warbler, and they often are near water. And they prefer alder and willow thickets, and they nest about 10 feet off the ground in the vertical fork of a bush or a small tree. And then the next we have our Pacific wren, and they live in forested habitats from sea level to 12,000 feet. And they are most common in old growth forest and live in mixed evergreen and deciduous trees. They often live near water and in areas with dead trees and fallen logs, stumps, brush piles, and thick understory. And they will often nest inside of natural cavities, but will also nest near streams and roots of down trees, under creek banks, and in decaying logs. So we'll pop another one in there. And you'll also see these large birds chasing salmon up the river every year. So it's a common Northwest species there.
I knew it. I knew it.
And we got to get to the next slide. Got to get to the next slide because I know Ken's probably shaking. There's no snags in these photos. So there we go. There's a snag over here to the.
Woo.
And this is, you can kind of see, this is kind of lots of going on here, but we have different heights of trees and brushes, flowers, grasses. You can see up here we have some open rocky areas. So there's lots and lots of birds that can come in here. You know, it's a very diverse landscape. So it's kind of neat. And then we're going to play another diversity game. And here we got another snag. And what do you think, Patrick? Is it about time to do a thinning on this one? That will give us time to put in some wildlife habitat as well.
Brent, that actually is a skip in a thinning unit, and it's thinned off to the left. But so the rest, it used to look like that, and they thinned the whole thing out, and they skipped that spot.
Do you know this forest, Ken?
Yeah, I took that picture. Yep.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, if it all looked like that, instead they thinned it over to the left. But if they thin the rest out, you know, they could add in a brush pile, and then you're gonna let, like they're thinning to the left, you can see they have more grass showing up, brush species. So you could also, another thing you could do is go get some pollinator species, and in the late fall, early winter area, before the snow comes, you could seed in some pollinators and kind of add diversity. Maybe you have a neighbor with some bee boxes and he'll come set his bees on your property and you'll end up with a free jar of honey. Man. And once you get that going, you might pop in some berry bushes such as a red osier dogwood or mulberries or huckleberries, kind of wherever you're at in the state, you can kind of look and find a bush species that will produce a berry or something that a bird can eat, and you can trait that. That way you have lots of diversity. You know, you'll have these logs breaking down, worms in there. You'll have lots of critters and insects, beetles in your log pile and insects in your flowers, and I have a berry in the end of the year out of the bush. So just lots of diversity. And you'll have your snag here too. So it's kind of some ideas on diversity and things you can do to your forest and your landscape. And then we have some backyard birding. On the top, you can see the cedar waxwing. It's getting some sap and lots of flowers and brushy areas. Keep your large trees away from your house to provide habitat. Some good dense areas during winter when it gets cold. As you can see over here, we got a couple of chickadees hanging out, one on the suet feeder hanging upside down. And we got an upland bird species, a chucker. I'm sure he's probably looks like he's only got one leg. He's trying to keep the other one warm, getting tired of the snow. But just kind of some ideas for your backyard. You don't have to mow the whole thing. You can put in some native wildflowers and bird feeders and make yourself a nice little patio to sit out there and listen and enjoy all of our bird species, sing away and enjoy the sunshine and spring, and hang some flower pots to get hummingbirds and enjoy your yard and your forest area. And then, as Ken says, when he's given some presentations once in a while, he had a kid tell him birders are creepy. So there's me posing as a creepy birder with the birds looking at me. And
I didn't say that. I actually had somebody say that to me when I was mentioning birders in a presentation. They said they're always going around with binoculars looking at me and they're creepy. I cracked up.
don't be afraid to be a creepy bird. You just need a bird book and some binoculars, and you can join the large family of 47 million birds in the United States. And on that note, thank you all for joining and have a wonderful weekend. Hope you enjoyed the series of birds and the wonderful flamingos. And special thanks to Greg Thompson for the great photos, and Ken Bevis, Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and Patrick and WSU Forestry Extension for putting this on. And special thanks to all of you for showing up. Now we can entertain some questions and have a discussion.
Nice. Thanks, Brent. That was awesome. I gotta say, 47 million birders is a really incredible number. that would be like 1 in 8 people are a birder or something like that. If you do that in the US, at least. It's remarkable. And really liked your game, or the with the birds popping up in their different habitats. I thought that was a really good illustration. Well done.
Yeah. And you can see more birds in these habitats. I was just kind of,
Oh, sure.
sticking with their main habitats. So don't be if you find something else in these habitats. I'm not saying this is all you're going to find. And there's also lots and lots of bird species. So we can fill these photos up with birds if we got into them all.
Well, before we get to the questions, I just want to pop a link in the chat for a survey about this series. I will follow up with an email and send that link out again, probably on Tuesday. But please look for that link, and while we're kind of talking and stuff, maybe fill it out. It should only take maybe 4 or 5 minutes, but your feedback on this series is really, really useful, particularly that box where you say whether or not, if you're a forest owner, and if what you learned is going to change your management at all. That's really important for our reporting. But the other thing that's really important is that box where you tell us what you'd like to see in future series. So yeah, should only take a few minutes. Go ahead and fill that link out. It's in the chat now. All right. Well, let's get to the questions here. I'm going to scroll to the top. And it's a long list. All right. Well, it looks like the first question we had was about whether or not that graphic is going to be accessible in the recording. And I did answer that in the chat, but Susan, yes, that will be visible in the recording. And I think Ken or Brent mentioned where you can find that on the Cornell website too, actually.
Hey, Patrick, this is timely to that right after that, I forgot who did it, but there's a great other Cornell migratory graphic that's in that second link. And thank you to who posted that. I'm sorry, we haven't got quite down to that yet, but you're gonna, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, Emily posted that. I'm looking at it right now. I'm gonna go ahead and just replug it back in the chat so that people can see that. All right. Laurel asked if the migration graphic was edited to filter for Pacific Northwest birds, and Ken, you answered that, but the answer is no, right? Those are birds outside of the Pacific Northwest as well. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and when you look at that list, there's like willets and peregrine falcons, and also East Coast. There's a whole bunch of them that go across the Gulf of Mexico into the forest in the east. That's kind of interesting. So yeah.
And I want to point out a comment from Gary that kind of touches on what we've talked about a lot this week, which is the importance of diversity for habitat. And that's not just species diversity, it's structural diversity too. And Gary had a comment there, and maybe you can elaborate a little too. More sunlight, meaning more grasses and forbs, wildflower shrubs, etc., but dense pockets also being important. This reminds me a lot of what we call variable density thinning on the west side, which takes, an even-aged conifer plantation and introduces a lot of that structural complexity, leaving dense areas, opening up other areas, creating small gaps with lots of sunlight where we can get shrub growth. And I know there's a comparative one for the east side too. I think is that called slops? Am I right?
Baby. Snags, lugs, legacy openings, patches, boughs, and shrubs.
Yeah. So Gary, I appreciate your comment on that.
Yeah. You hit it on the head there. Just, that the importance of that diversity across the landscape when you're thinking about the bigger picture and not just that real localized, treatment area.
Right.
Ken mentioned that, like for those, or maybe Brent had mentioned about, some of those thicker pockets actually provide thermal cover for a lot of these species when they're in those cold environments during the winter. So they're definitely important too.
And as Ken said yesterday, no need to clean up your forest. Well, to some
you don't
degree.
need to park it out.
Yeah. All right. So Allie says, what is the best bird seed to attract diverse species? And we actually had a couple questions about bird seed in general. So if there's additional thoughts from you guys, it's good for discussion.
Just from having bird feeders for years, black oil sunflower seeds seem to be the most universal seed type for the most number of birds. And yeah, there's so many websites about bird feeding and types of seed and which kind of feeder. It's quite the hobby for many people. And here, there's a tidbit about bird feeding is why do we feed birds? So we can see them. Mostly we're just trying to draw them in close to look at them. And we may be enhancing survival in hard seasons like a hard winter for some birds, for darn sure we are. But mostly we do it for the ability to see them. I'm looking out the window at my bird feeders right now, in fact. And questions about bird flu, there's one that's coming up, whether or not that concentrates birds and we should take them down because of bird flu or other diseases. Those are things that are beyond my expertise, but there's lots of information about that where you can make an informed decision as to how to manage your own bird feeders.
All right. Thanks, Ken. Janet asked, any recommendations for binoculars? It's interesting. I just have the binoculars that my grandpa gave me. They're super old, but I don't want to get new ones.
I can weigh in on that one too, if you want.
Yeah, go for it, Ken. There's lots of, depends on how much you want to spend, if you ask me.
Exactly. There's kind of like, there's three layers. There's the old thrift store $25 that are out of focus and don't work. There's a whole bunch of really good mid-range binoculars that are like $3 to $4, maybe even $500 that are like Bushnell and Vortex, and those are really good. And then there's the $2,000 Leicas and that sort of stuff that are only marginally better than that mid-range. So there's a whole bunch of mid-range ones I have a pair of Vortex that I just really like. What's the other? A Bushnell. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them, but that mid-range, there's some excellent binoculars and they're all pretty good. So you need to think about the size of the exit hole. I'm personally really biased towards a bigger exit hole because then you get more light so you can see it better. So that's another thing. Go into a birding store. What is it called? Wild Birds Unlimited. There you go.
Yep.
One of those
Yeah.
stores. And go in there and say, I'm looking for a pair of binoculars in the mid range, and they'll put 5 pairs out and they're all good. So there you go. I actually, I can give that litany because I went shopping to get my wife a nice pair of binoculars for a gift, and I did my homework.
Nice. So we have a couple questions about requests for bird calls. But I wonder if Brent, Ken, Gary, if you know a good website. I imagine Cornell is probably, we've been talking about Cornell a lot, but where people could go and hear bird calls.
Yep.
Cornell
Cornell's.
doesn't get much better.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty much top notch.
Yeah. That's
It's
great.
it's also the home site of eBird too. Yeah. So
Oh, nice.
So the Cornell Lab of Ornithology is indeed, that's the place to go. And once you go there, Joe, you'll find all kinds of stuff. It's kind of amazing.
I
you
do
can
want to.
spend-
Oh, go
yeah,
ahead,
just-
Brent.
I was just gonna say you can spend days and days on that website looking at birds.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I want to point out another resource that I'm not terribly familiar with, so I don't have a great review of it yet. But it's called the Merlin Bird ID app. Have any of you guys tried that?
Oh yeah. Yes. Merlin is excellent and it's free.
Yes.
So on your smartphone, like Merlin, not only is like a bird book, so you don't have to carry a bird book around, and Sibley has one too that you actually have to pay $25 for, but Merlin is free. And yeah, and it's like having all the information you want right at your fingertips. So Merlin, it's an
and I
app.
believe it works basically like what was that app called? Shazam, where it can listen to a bird call and it IDs it that way.
Yeah, if you're
Yeah.
close enough, yes, you
If you're
can like,
close.
oh, what's that one? It's astounding. Yes.
Yeah. So Marion had a question. She says, off subject question. I'm trying to install a barred owl box. So this probably be for you, Ken. And I'm finding getting up a tree very challenging. Oh, I'm on Whidbey Island. Is there any organization that might help with this? So installation of bird boxes.
You could try the conservation district, but I might suggest putting down a little bit of coin and get an arborist to help you. Get somebody who knows how to climb a tree. Or, I mean, because here's something, you're going to need to be able to get to it to clean out the chips and stuff, in the future. And they don't have to be 30 feet up. They could be 15 feet up. So if you have just an extension ladder, put it at a height where you can reach it. You might get somebody else to mount it. But that is an issue with owl boxes because they need to be a little ways off the ground. But yeah, find your local arborist and then you check it every other year. Fun.
So Becky asked to define what a snag is.
Standing dead tree.
Of course. But when does the snag become, when is it no longer a snag?
After it falls over, it
falls
becomes yeah, and it's a log.
All right. I guess I should have asked, is there a minimum height for a snag?
Yeah, for habitat snag, my line has been 8 feet and 10 inches.
So that's what I've been trying to point you towards.
Yeah.
And in the forest practice rules, it's 16 feet and 20-inch diameter.
Oh, that's
No,
important.
that's not
spotted owl habitat.
That's actually, Gary, that varies in different parts of the state. But the forest practices rules are how do I say, not biologically, well, they're biologically based, but yeah. But yep, exactly. But okay, let's say I say 8 feet because of hairy woodpeckers, and I say 10 to 12 inches for smaller birds.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely scale driven depending on the species.
Yep.
All right, so Allie asked, should we or should we not call to wild birds? I've heard that can be disruptive to their activities.
It really depends on the time of the year, because if you're in a breeding cycle, and you walk into a breeding territory and you play a call and the male pops up and starts singing, two things happen. He just wasted a bunch of energy thinking that he's being challenged, and he might expose himself to predators because predators do nail birds that are singing. So you think about the evolutionary cost of a display, it's really dangerous. And so, you're sitting up on top of a bush going doodly 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 doodly, and here comes a merlin or a sharpshin, goes, uh-oh. So in particular, and I mean, it's really a great way to get to see birds, but it's an ethical question for birders who are, and I'll criticize birders, even though I am one, who are just interested in getting a species for their list. They will go out, and with these apps, it's become widespread, play the call, the birds pop up on the bush, they get the sighting, then they walk, okay, they leave, and the bird still thinks its territory was invaded. So probably in general, we shouldn't.
Those dang birders.
They're kind of creepy, aren't they? Oh wait, we
Right.
are.
That's what I hear.
That's funny.
So Matt has a question that might harken to yesterday's presentation. Is there a good way to keep woodpeckers on the snags rather than our poles? And it sounds like he's with Snohomish PUD.
Oh.
So this could be a problem at scale for them.
I think the poles are snags.
Yeah.
Matt, honestly, probably not. Yeah, that's a long-standing issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably cost prohibitive to wrap every pole.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good question.
Kim asks, where can I find the link to the duck boxes that were talked about earlier this week? Kim, do you have that one?
Yeah, go to okay. I could find it again, but Kim, if you go to Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, their website, just right up in the top, write wood duck manual or something like that, and it'll take you to Living with Wildlife and that whole PDF. It's a great little publication. I can find it, but I think you can find it pretty easy. But it's Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife.
It's
in
wdfw.wa.gov.
There you go.
Get you to their main web page.
And you can also find a lot of information on Ducks Unlimited's website.
Yep.
About
Yep.
that.
Yeah. So Kim, let us know if you don't find that, and we'll find it for you.
Yeah, feel free to email me or give me a call on my cell phone.
Yeah, same.
So it looks like Emily had a comment/question on the survey, and I can answer that. She mentioned that she can't choose to or select both owning and managing a forested property. The first question is going to ask you is whether or not you own forested property or manage forest property. So I'm sorry that was confusing. By manage, I mean you work for someone who owns forest land and manage their property for them. By own, I'm sort of just assuming that you manage it too. So in this situation, if you own it, just click that, and I'll try to make that more clear in the next survey. But thank you, Emily, and everyone that filled out the survey so far. Alan asks, is it okay to feed birds and quail with rejected wheat grain that's untreated? They seem to enjoy it, but I believe we're not supposed to feed the four-legged wildlife.
I have no idea. If is it treated with
Four-legged.
anything? Or you say rejected?
It
It's
is
not.
untreated.
It's
I don't-
untreated.
Untreated.
Oh, you said
yeah.
untreated. It
Yeah.
should be fine. And if the deer and the turkeys come in, you and the deer in particular, you just generate those possible issues with cougars following the deer projecting diseases to each other. So yeah, it's the same set of issues. Feeding is a bit of a moral question that there's no right answer to.
The one thing I will say is feeding birds now with the bird flu, I've seen where it is recommended to not feed continuously throughout the day. Maybe just put some seeds out there in the morning or afternoon, and then kind of, you could even, if you put them in a feeder, you can even disinfect that feeder. Just make sure you're not putting that feeder back out there with food with disinfectant on the food. But you can do things like that to kind of help with wildlife diseases from them spreading.
Nice. Thanks, Brent. let's see. So Celia, so there's another question about the survey. How big of an area of trees is required to be a forest owner? That's a really good question. I mean, I generally say, like an acre.
Yeah.
But honestly, even a cluster of trees a quarter acre in size can take on
Yeah.
forest qualities and a forest ecology. So I'll just leave that up to your discretion. If you want to call yourself a forest owner, if you have less than an acre, that's totally fine by me.
We'll,
All right.
we'll work with almost anybody.
Right.
But once it gets down to single trees, then that's arbor work.
Yeah. Especially if they're in the landscape setting next to houses and stuff like that.
Right.
Suzanne asks, anyone know if the seeds from white bryony, I've never actually heard of that before, are poisonous to birds?
I've
Good
never heard
question.
of it. I've never heard of that one either.
Me neither.
One thing I can say on that note is it is known that birds, they can eat fermented berries later in the fall, and they can become, they can get drunk and potentially even die from alcohol poisoning.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's my problem too.
Says here that white bryony is actually highly poisonous.
There we go.
It's the only
Or-
native member of the cucumber family, but it's highly poisonous. The roots are particularly toxic, and despite their bitter taste, sometimes get eaten by cattle and with fatal consequences. So,
Wow.
kill
Thank
There
cows.
you go.
Thank you, Grandma Google.
Yeah.
Gary Google.
Yeah, Gary Google. I like that.
I like Gary Gnu.
So Lisa plugged in the chat a link there for an opportunity to be, looks like people that like to bird by ear to look into adopting a breeding birds survey route. There are several routes in Washington that aren't being done these days. So that looks like a really cool program. Yeah, so folks should definitely check that out.
That's super cool. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Oh,
And this demonstrates too how limited our real data is on bird populations and bird migrations. So when we're making comments about the population of this, that, or the other has increasing or declined, it's often surmising based on some pretty sketchy data. And these breeding bird surveys are one of the better sources of that data, like indicating trends. You'll read something that says X basquillion birds have died. How do we know that? How do we monitor? And so the breeding bird surveys are one of those major sources.
Nice. Well, we got a couple questions about the recording again, and specifically whether or not the chat will be included. So the chat's not actually included in like the video of the recording. You won't be able to see the chat as you go through, but there is a chat transcript available, and those are already up there for the last 4 sessions. All right, let's see, moving on. Interesting. Looking for some questions. We might have. Janet, you put in something mysterious. You just put 8x40. Can you maybe tell us what that's for? If Ken, do you know what that is?
I know what she means. She means binoculars. Yes,
Okay.
that's a good size. So the first number in binoculars is the magnification. The second number is in degrees, the width of the view field. And probably the standard binoculars that are about right are 8x. And so 8x40 is excellent. Yes. 10x are tighter and they don't get as much light. So that's a good size. Yep.
Cool. Just below that, Betty says Cornell and National Audubon have conducted reviews on binoculars. So that's probably a really good place to get some feedback. Anna asks for any comments on cats and the reduction of birds.
I would say 2 things. One is if you have a cat, you're going to let it outside, please put a bell on it. That way when it runs around, it makes noise and birds can hear it coming. And 2, a well-fed cat will kill more birds. They don't need to kill birds for food at that point. They're just doing it for fun because it's just in their nature, just like a well-fed human is better at learning and doing things in their life.
Oh, so
Keep
feeding the cats doesn't keep them from.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
they'll become better at
Keep
killing
them in.
them.
Keep them inside cats.
Yeah.
House cats are cultivars of North African wildcats, which were adapted to live in the brush and catch small prey. And obviously they have wonderful, I love cats, by the way, and they have tremendous prey drive, but cats are one of the three. Okay, there's three major things you can do to help bird conservation. One is keep your cats inside. Two, reduce window strikes. Three, turn out night lighting so that it doesn't disrupt night migration. And if everybody did those three things collectively, it would help a lot. So there's a bunch of cool articles about that, Anna, too. And and there's clown collars too. Brent, did you ever hear those? A little thing where it goes around the cat's head and it makes it really bright colored. They
Oh,
actually
no.
work. Yeah.
That's funny.
And I will say you could go to Grandma Google and research a catio. You can
Yeah,
put in
cat's
cat-
right, a
There
catio.
you go.
Yeah, there you go. Nice.
So Helen asks, what is an exit hole?
That
I
would
assume
be,
that's referring to like a snag or.
yeah, tree cat.
or binoculars. She might be talking about binoculars.
Oh,
Oh, she is talking about binoculars.
that's the
meaning-
problem. The chat is not up with
Oh,
the.
good point. No, I meant the back end of the binoculars. You're looking through the binoculars, so the I guess that's the wrong word. The ocular, the rear ocular. There you go. The wider it is, the more light that gets to your eye, and the brighter the image is. But you often lose magnification. So that's where the 8x40. Yeah, read some stuff about binoculars. It's pretty cool. Yep.
All right. So that is, I think that's all we have.
Boy, what fun. What great fun. What
Let
a
me see
wonderful
here.
discussion.
An
Oh,
awesome-
hold on.
awesome
Hold on.
audience.
I think we got a couple more. Sorry. I'm scrolling through the bottom here. Jana asks, trying to keep squirrels away from my suet and seed feeders. Any ideas?
Reason with them. You mean eastern gray squirrels, the big gray ones in town somewhere, or the little Douglas squirrels?
She doesn't specify, so maybe she can say.
Yeah, we're doing
Well,
battle.
they do
She
they
said-
do make squirrel
Right.
unfriendly types of bird feeders that are designed so that the squirrels can't get to them, but the birds can.
Yeah, exactly.
And
You watch
go
those
back to
videos.
Grandma Google.
You watch those videos of the people putting up the squirrel obstacle course. It's really fun.
So,
Nice.
this
And we-
is,
We're getting we got some really solid reviews of Merlin here too.
oh yeah, people really seem to like that app. Although one person did say it was very difficult to pick up the call sometimes.
really?
But it seems like it's one of the best resources we have, at least so far, while the technology catches up.
Yeah. Oh, here's the link to the wood duck boxes in there too.
Uh,
Two
Jim
projects.
asks, he's having a problem with red-tailed hawks attacking his drone.
Drone. Oh
Oh,
man.
man.
He wonders why, and I assume it's just that's just birds of prey behavior.
Yeah, territorial.
Yeah.
Boy, what fun.
Helen asked for the survey link. I just popped that back in the chat towards the bottom, Helen. So go and take a look for that again. It looks all right. Emily's got a question here. Speaking of toxic berries, I have heard that Nandina is toxic to birds, but they do not eat them. What do you all know about that topic? This might be another one for Google.
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody asked us if it's illegal to take away gray squirrels. Eastern gray squirrels are unprotected species, so you can kill them at will, but you're not supposed to move them around.
Don't hurt the western gray squirrels. They're state threatened species.
But they're very unusual and only occur in certain parts of the state.
So back to Nandina, it's a toxic, has cyanide and other alkaloids that produce a very highly toxic hydrogen cyanide, which is extremely poisonous to all animals. So there you have that.
There you
I'm
go.
glad you're here, Gary.
Thank Google. I'm just a messenger.
He's the man. Oh, geez, you're funny.
Gotta have that guy.
Okay.
All right. Well, I
Somebody
do
knows
think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying somebody's got to know this stuff.
That's right. Somebody.
Interwebs knows everything.
That's true.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Well, I think that's it, guys. That is a series wrap. Appreciate everybody tuning in. And as I said, we will be doing this again next month. I'm just going to, for good measure, go ahead and put that link in the chat again if you want to learn about root rots next month. We'll be doing another lunch series. But Brent, Ken, Gary, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, make sure you sign up for the WSU email link if you haven't done that already.
Yeah, that way you get notice of all of these different
Right.
webinar series that are coming up.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I want to thank all the people that have signed up because you make our work possible and important. And even though we're a little bit imperfect and we learn as we go too, to be able to have this dialogue, Patrick, you guys' work with WSU really enables us to find our people, and here they are. So thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate you putting all this together, Patrick.
Yes, great deal, and awesome for people showing up and great questions. It makes the discussion a lot better to have interactions.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep. And good job today, Brent, with a nearly impossible topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a
Great
lot.
job, Brent.
And I apologize to anyone out there if I didn't get your favorite bird in there.
Just email us, personal email.
Yeah.
That's
That's right.
Oh, that's funny.
All right. Well, with that, then I'll just thank you guys again. Really appreciate it. I'm sure I'll be running into you soon, one way or another. But I hope everybody has a great weekend and gets out in the woods, does something fun, maybe see some birds. And with that, I will close it out. Thanks again.
Bye, everybody.
Sounds good.
Thank you all.
Thanks all.